Hey everybody, this is Connor, one of the producers for the Rxperience podcast from the ACP staff. Welcome to the episode. In this episode, Chad and Tom do a question and answer, and it's part two of a recording we released a couple weeks ago. So in this cut, they didn't do a formal intro, so I'm here to intro you in. Hope you enjoy the episode.
But with that said, let me ask you a few questions. Just kind of, I'm going to put you on the spot as much as I
Great.
can, but try to keep it positive as much as I can. But understanding you understand as better as well as anyone in America what's happening in long-term care in the industry. You understand those shortages and those stats, and there's really nothing that I can throw at you that you're not fully embedded in understanding where we're at today. But if you were I don't know if you were Dr. Oz or if you were President Trump, if you had the power of the reins, how would you take long-term care pharmacy, specifically that model in our industry right now, knowing everything that you know and the challenges of the seniors, the challenges of polypharmacy, the challenges of not having enough resources, and what would you fundamentally change? So you have a white slate, whiteboard. What would you fundamentally change to make sure that pharmacists are in that position? And again, the focus is about patient care.
Well, I mean, I think without question, and to preface my answer, I think the wheels are in motion for this already. But I think what I would say is let's fully recognize that what we want as both, Americans, and it seems as government officials or people working at CMS, what we want is access to all of the potential treatments that could be successful. So that means there's two things we have to do. One, we have to get those things at a cost that's not being manipulated or creating access issues. So we got to get rid of rebates. We got to get rid of,
The middleman.
I hate to say this to my 340B friends out there, but hey, 340B is spread pricing. We got to get rid of it. But we have to get rid of it from the perspective of paying for the services that are being rendered. So if a pharmacy is going to buy a drug at a low price and sell it to you at a low price, or sell it to your insurance company at a low price, or sell it to Medicare at a low price, you have to pay for what the pharmacist is doing. And the pharmacist in our world today, especially in long-term care, is doing more than going to the shelf, putting it into a bottle and handing it to you. They're obviously doing safety checks. They're making sure you know how to use it. They're putting it in the packaging style that matters to you. Like, I don't want 8 amber vials. I want compliance packaging. I want it delivered. I want you to deliver it to my house so I don't have to come pick it up. I want you to talk to me about it and answer my questions that I have about it. After I start it, I might have those questions. So I think we have to pay for those services to some degree.
Right.
Nursing homes have had that for a long time. Nursing home resident has one pharmacy, one doctor, a consultant pharmacist. They get their meds administered to them by a nurse.
Yeah.
I mean, really, they get the best of med management. People that live in outside of a skilled nursing home, so everybody else, assisted living and community included, don't have access to those benefits. So I would change that. I would say, hey, if you're an older adult and have a certain level of complexity to you, either because of your conditions or the number of meds that you're on, you should have access to all those services if you want them. Do you want your meds delivered? All right, that's an extra, the pharmacy is going to be able to bill a code for that. Do you want compliance packaging? Bill a code for that. Do you want to talk to the pharmacist once a month? Code for that. That's what we have to do. That's ultimately what we have to do. And I think we're headed that way. I only say that because if you look at Mark Cuban's and ultimately
cost plus mentality.
Yeah. What Trump is trying to do with Trump RX, they're recognizing that because they're paying the community pharmacist $12 for a medication that they get through that path. And I don't know if that's the end all be all answer, but it's a good start because it's a fair reimbursement level. Whether you break it out into individual services or you bundle it in one fee, I think that debate will continue, and it may be different based on, what you're asking for, or, again, how complex you are as an individual. But I think that's what I would say.
The healthcare system with medications kind of did not follow the capitalistic environment, the capitalistic industry, because in capitalism, you should be able to compete for your services. And so one pharmacy company should have to compete with another pharma company. But kind of the opposite happened. Yeah. They just basically shared revenue with a PBM, and then everything else was excluded. Now this is a formulary drug, but the user isn't saving any money.
Yeah.
And we've kind of done the opposite of what a capitalistic world kind of incentivizes, which is competition.
Yeah.
And if my drug really is the best one for me, and there's been all these pharma rules put in. I mean, back when we were growing up in the 80s and 90s, doctors were getting flown to special resorts and getting monies where they probably shouldn't have been getting monies just to prescribe their medications. And I believe for the most part that's been kind of curbed and controlled, where you don't see doctors hopefully prescribing based on anything other than the clinical appropriateness of that medication. I'm sure there's some of that still exists today, but that was out of control back in the 80s and 90s, and that's now under control. But really to say, hey, if that's is truly the best medication for that patient, and then based on the cost plus, based on the cost, that pharma company needs to lower their price if they want to compete with other medications within their within that sector of medications, within that GNC.
Yeah, I think what people are missing, and I am not a price control person, but what I think people are missing with IRA is the government came in and said, this is what we're willing to pay for these 10 medications. And I don't love that answer. But what that answer does for us as clinicians is says to us, all right, your job is not to make decisions because something's cheaper than the other thing. We got you the good price on Eliquis and Xarelto. So you don't have to make decisions and say, well, we're going to use warfarin because it's cheap. As a clinician, I should just be worried about access. What med do I need for the person sitting in front of me? I need Xarelto. I need Eliquis. So I now can get it, and I can get it at a price that everybody has said is a good price. So I don't have to worry. I don't have to be that cost person. I mean, I grew up practicing in a world where it was the doc would be like, well, I'm not using that. It's too expensive. Well, I mean, yeah, that matters if the person's paying for it or their copay is $80 versus $5. But if it doesn't matter to the patient and somebody's negotiated a good price on it, even if it is hundreds of dollars, if it's the right drug, it's the right drug. I would want my parent on that. I wouldn't want them to take, well, let's try the cheap one. And if they fail that, then we can try the good one. No, that's not how it should work.
It depends on all the cost around it. Warfarin requires labs and ongoing labs.
Sure.
Warfarin certainly has a plethora of additional side effects, but rehospitalization costs way more than that medication costs.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, it's a total cost, not just the cost of that medication. And sometimes, people are very siloed in their thinking, just comparing the cost. But
well, I mean, I even used it with GLP-1s because it's, everybody's talking about it, everybody is taking them. The clinical advantage of saying to somebody, let's say you're type 2 diabetic and you're using insulin, to say to somebody, hey, you can be on this insulin, it will work great. You have to follow your blood glucose every day. You have to calculate your dose. You have to think about what you're eating at a meal so that you have the right amount. You have to do that every single day.
3 times a day.
Every single day. Or, it is, $1,200 versus $35. You can take this once a week when you go to church. I mean, it's just, to me, we have to make those things accessible because it's the difference between success and failure for a lot of people.
But to your point, there's things that are happening when pharmacists look at like most favored nations,
Yeah.
and certainly that seems like going to be a negative for reimbursement, negative for pharmacy. But that should have never needed. That should have always been the case. We should have always had favored nation pricing.
Yeah.
It was created in America and invented in America, and for some reason, we're paying more than anyone else in any other country. But because those mistakes were made with trying to save cost in certain areas and not even trying to save cost in other areas, with PBMs and not having a most favored nations, we created this system that requires a geriatric person to maybe not be able to afford their medications. And all of a sudden now they've got, that's a real true, happening in America today. And so something, even though seems like a negative with most favored nations, it might get us close to that cost plus model that you're referring to. That kind of makes everything a little easier for everyone involved in the supply chain.
Yeah. I mean, we have to do the right things, I think, and suggest that we don't want foreign countries in charge of our access to medications. But we also have to read between the lines of what this administration is doing with respect to most favored nation pricing, which is really using it as leverage to get a better price. It's not about saying, okay, we're gonna do whatever Germany says on pricing. It's about threatening that, hey, we see what Germany's paying and we don't understand why we're paying this. So how are you going to rectify that, drug company, so that we can get a price that gives our citizens access to the medications they need? Because right now they're too expensive, and some people aren't getting them because they're too expensive. But if you're Germany, you can get them. It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So it's more about transparency and breaking down some of that model than it is about tying yourself to any particular country. And I think people have to realize that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Good point. So that's the utopia that you created if Chad was in charge, which we all hope to get there someday.
Right.
But the reality of it is we still got payors and PBMs and a health system that's fractured. And the reality of it is we are where we're at right now. So what are the most important things do you think that pharmacies should be doing right now that can kind of help them survive until we get to that utopia world that we're hoping to get to someday?
Well, I mean, I think they have to be much more in tune with the kind of medication management that they're delivering. So you need to really understand your costs. You need to understand where you have the opportunity to save on operations or where a technology provides you benefits. And then on the flip side, you have to think about the products that you're selling. And I know it almost sounds like obvious when you say it, but I think because we as pharmacists handle so many medications, so many SKU numbers, we lose track of whether or not we make money on that particular SKU number. And we're not paying attention, I think, as closely as we could to getting people the right medications and how getting them the right medications may result in better sustainable revenue for pharmacy. And so there's plenty of examples out there of, we're experts at taking care of older adults with medical complexity. A lot of older adults have difficulty swallowing. This is not a trick. This is not a marketing scheme. People have trouble swallowing. There are products out there that come in liquid forms and sprinkle caps and all kinds of things that accommodate somebody that can't swallow. They're more expensive. Pharmacies tend to generate more revenue from those, but it's the right thing to do. And so we can't apologize for that. We have to have the right systems in place. Now, we shouldn't use it when you don't need it because that's not right. But if we need it, we should use it. There are plenty of drugs on the Beers list and the stop-start criteria. There are drugs that we should absolutely just never use in an older adult that we've allowed third parties and PBMs to tell us we have to use, or face the prior auth or the step edit process. And I think we have to be more aggressive at the prior auth step edit process and say, no, listen, I'm not going to give my dad an anticholinergic medication that is going to cause all kinds of problems for him because it's cheap. I'm going to give him a better product that's out there that, yeah, it might be, $4 or $5 more per day to be on that other medication, but in the end, he's going to be safer and get better outcomes from it. So I need to do that. And I need not apologize for, we made a little bit more on that as a pharmacy than we would had it been the cheap generic, but it's the right drug for the patient. So I think pharmacies have to do a much better job of that and not leaving things on the table, because the payment system is not, they don't have control over it.
Right.
All they have control over is how they're managing that relationship with that patient, that nursing home client, and they should be doing the best for them, even if it means pushing buttons on the other side that unlock medications that they generate more sustainable revenue on.
So we talked about how much excitement was going on, 250 year here and all this new stuff that was going to happen. And we were going to have a very exciting year in America. But there are some disruptive points when it comes to long-term care pharmacy and what's going on. There are some crossroads, 2 or 3 crossroads that we really would like to see that happen this year. Just because it doesn't happen this year doesn't mean it's going to be pushed off for 5 years. But at the same time, this is really the year that some of this needs to happen. We've got a current administration that has control over the House and the Senate and the executive. That might not be the case come November. Mm-hmm. And do you think that you're concerned that there could be a stalemate, so to speak, and that would be true during any midterm elections? So knowing and understanding that, what do you think is really critical that needs to get passed and done prior to midterm elections coming up here in early November?
I'm going to answer, first of all, I'm going to answer 2 ways. One, we have passed PBM reform. So being as articulate and influential as possible for long-term care pharmacy is critical until that RFI comes out, which appears that it will stay on schedule, which means it comes out April of next year. But that gives us a lot of time to refine what our priorities are and start, talking about those priorities so that we are doing the right influence of that RFI when it comes out. How do we want PBM reform to look for long-term care? What are the priorities? And I can give you a quick summary of where the priorities stand right now. One is reasonable and relevant reimbursement. Obviously, we want to be paid appropriately. 2 is network adequacy. We want to make sure that long-term care pharmacies are not excluded from payer networks. We don't have the opportunity to say no to a contract if 22 people of a 100-bed nursing facility have chosen that plan, because we can't go into that nursing home and be like, hey, we don't cover those 22 people, just these other 78. So we need a network adequacy to keep that. And then we need a pharmacy bill of rights, probably long-term care, probably overall pharmacy bill of rights. I don't know that it matters if it's long-term care, that outline how the PBM enforces the contracting and what that contracting can and cannot do to a pharmacy. So standardization of audit procedures. They can't say that you can't talk about, your contract based on certain things, and restrict then your ability to have business or do business. So I think those are the priorities. On one hand, that's what we got to keep working on, nose to the grindstone, pay attention to those elections because those individuals will become influential next year. The other thing is, this administration has told us from the go that they think that the impact of IRA and all these pricing schemes needs to be solved in the marketplace. We have seen some payers in long-term care come up with a reasonable solution, paying upwards of $20 to $30 a dispensing fee for an IRA medication, which is what we were asking for legislative. So not everybody did. And then we also have the manufacturers, which had to revert to a new system of reimbursing the pharmacy for the difference in the price of the product and the sales price to Medicare, letting that settle for a second before we get into, okay, how are you going to support pharmacies that are supporting the access of your medication now? In other words, we're, as a pharmacy, we're making sure that every person that needs Eliquis gets Eliquis. So where's the remuneration for that from the manufacturer in terms of educational dollars or support dollars for that pharmacy that's taking that initiative? Maybe they're creating a formulary that ensures people get the best product, supporting it from that perspective. Again, that's a marketplace solution. So we've got to win a little bit with the manufacturers on how you're getting reimbursed. And we have to win on getting the administration to put pressure on those payers that haven't recognized that the game has changed and we need to be paying a more reasonable and relevant dispensing fee because we took the margin out of the product. And I think that's where your fix is going to come from. I don't think you're going to get a lot of legislative fixes that aren't already out there and on the table. You're going to get them through the marketplace, and if the administration is honest, they should be helping push some of that stuff for you. So if we go in and we can do this, pharmacies can't do this, but we can do this. We can go in and say, hey, this PBM is not playing fair. They're not adjusting. We get the administration to call up that PBM and like, hey, listen, the system has changed. We got low drug prices over here. You can't lock out these pharmacies or put them in a position where they can't accept your contract because you're not being responsive to the change in the marketplace. And I do think there's some ability for the administration to get some compliance from the payers, the plans. So we'll see. But that's where we have to spend our time, is articulating that message and getting government response to that. So like, the CMS letters that have come out, a couple of them have come out in the past year that talk about network adequacy, kind of enforcing the position of CMS. Like, you need to make sure that long-term care pharmacies have access to your networks. But more of that and more pressure, teeth to those kinds of, it's not just a, hey, you need to do this letter. There needs to be some level of enforcement. That's where we have to spend our time.
Yeah, that's great stuff. And, I think that's something we can concentrate on very specifically if you've got a Congress person or a senator that is running for re-election here.
Yep.
Getting them into your pharmacy, getting them to really understand, break it down for them, and very simple 1, 2, 3, something that they can grab onto and really understand the impact that what PBMs and IRA and other things have had for our industry, and then the vulnerability of our seniors out there, not just inside the nursing center, but seniors in general. So I think that'd be great talking points and to really focus. And we've mentioned this in the past, like if you've got someone in your area that's directly in your county or your area that's running for re-election on a federal level, to work with Jim and ASCP, and they'll get you connected with that LA, and most of them want to go to they're going to be in their communities. They want to talk to their constituents. They want to visit the nursing home. They want to visit the pharmacy. They want to get a Photoshop with them, going out, shaking hands. And so they'll give you a few minutes, understand it's an election year for them.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be,
and we have to think through those things. A lot of people in this area write off our ability to do things with Congress probably starting in June, because it pivots to election season. However, election season means I can get these people to visit my pharmacy in my district or nursing home and see what I do. it means I can get them to probably sign on to a letter that says, hey, CMS, these pharmacies are struggling. You need to help them. They'll sign on to letters because that's them doing something for their constituency. And then we have to really pay attention. And this is where Jim's, beautiful mind has to work, where regardless of what happens, well, let's say in November, the Democrats take over the House. The Republicans retain the Senate, which is what everybody predicts is probably going to happen. You will have a lame duck session of Republican control until the end of the year. There will be bills that they're like, well, we don't have control anymore starting January 20th, so we're going to pass something because this is our last shot. And we have to be paying attention to that so that we know what might go in there. It'll leave the House passed, and then we'll have to get the right number of votes from a handful of Democrats in the Senate. So what are we doing to influence that between now and then to make sure that let's call it a health bill, gets through? And that takes a lot of, deft structuring of what a bill looks like, because you got to pick off, I don't remember, Jim would know, of course, X number of senators to get to 60 votes. If you've got, 53 right now. So you need 7 votes. And we need to be thinking about that stuff.
Right.
Now, granted, the Senate could flip and the House could stay. The House could stay and the Senate could stay. Both houses could flip, whatever. But we have to kind of be paying attention as close as possible to what those scenarios might look like. And then therefore, do we have a little last minute thing at the end of the year or not?
And there are a handful of Democratic senators that vote not necessarily on party line.
Sure.
That vote based on what they
particularly in
believe
healthcare. Particularly for healthcare things.
Yeah, for sure. So I think it's a great window of opportunity. I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yep.
Now, we've had a couple regional meetings already in the Northeast and South Central. Do you want to kind of recap for everybody how those went and what memorable moments from those 2 events that you went to, and basis that we're about halfway through? We got 2 or 3 more coming up this summer.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've both been great. Honestly, the venues have been great. The engagement has been great in terms of our members. So it's interesting because the way the first 2 have gone, we're trying to figure out ways to maximize on what people felt so that we can generate more attendees next year at that particular regional. We just got the Northeast survey back, and the score that the meeting got was a 4.8. It's a pretty good score, 4.8 out of 5.
As I say, you have to tell it's out of 5. Out of 10, not so much. But out of 5, we're good.
Yeah. It's not like my grade point average in high school, which was 4.8, but that was out of 4. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, I was traditional grade point average high school. Anyway, everybody loved that venue. So we're thinking in the Northeast, we find 3, maybe 4 venues that everybody likes and just rotate. And that way, all the people that went to this venue this year would tell all their colleagues, "Oh my gosh, what a wonderful place it was." So next time it comes up, people will know. Like, I didn't even know what that venue was going to be like until I got there this time. So just some of those things, making sure we craft the right educational cadence. We have 1 track of education, so it's got to slowly move between, pharmacists working on the business operations side and pharmacists working clinically and pharmacists in different settings. So you have to make sure those educational sessions have meaning for everybody. So, but they've been great. And we have the next one we have is Greenville, South Carolina, which is really the first
beautiful
Southeast.
Upstate, South Carolina. Yep.
First regional that hasn't been in Florida for that particular region. Now we're going to still have a Florida meeting in October. But this will give people in Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, those states, Alabama, a little bit better maybe access to a regional meeting, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, if you've never been to upstate South Carolina, beautiful area just off the foothills of the Appalachians. So lots of big, beautiful lakes. Greenville, downtown Greenville is amazing. Very lots of nice places to eat. Very picturesque, beautiful area. So I'm looking forward to going there.
Yeah, we've got Columbus, Ohio for Midwest in July, and York, Pennsylvania in August for Mid-Atlantic. We have a couple of Northwest and West region activities. They're not full-blown regionals, but they're activities. So we're doing things with the different groups that we work with out there. The Northwest Pharmacists Association meeting is always a good one for the people in that area. It's always at Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. It's beautiful venue. Beautiful. And we do like a half day pre-meeting rolling into that meeting for those pharmacists out there. So a lot of great opportunities.
Fantastic. Well, last question. Again, we've created a utopia world for the future of pharmacy. So other than the Penguins winning the Stanley Cup, what is the most important thing that you would like to see happen? Could be in sports, could be political, could just be in America. But what are you most looking forward to from Chad in 2026? The number one thing, you can only pick one.
So this is not pharmacy or ASCP related.
Could be anything in general.
Yeah, I think it's I'm in a particularly interesting year. I have a daughter graduating from elementary school and heading to high school. I have a son graduating from high school and heading to college. So I think my thing would be just watching that happen and enjoying it the best I can. Like, it's a big transformational year when your first child goes off to college. You've experienced this, obviously. I've not, and I'm not struggling with it, but I don't love this concept of my son moving away, and I'm happy for him, but I'm like sad for me. But watching the kids grow and take those next steps, I think that's what I'm really looking forward to this year.
Awesome to hear. Well, Mr. Waters, thank you for your time. Exciting year. Looking forward to spending it with you and doing a lot of fun things this year.
Yep. All right, everybody. We'll see you next time on Rxperience.